It's one of the ugly realities of football. Players get hurt, and sometimes those injuries can be terrifying. Last Friday, it happened in Atlanta when Detroit Lions defensive back Maurice Norris suffered a scary head injury while making a tackle. The 24-year-old was tended to by medical staff before being taken away in an ambulance. According to the latest reports, he's in concussion protocol but will make a full recovery. Norris's injury was a reminder of two different but similar incidents, one being Buffalo Bills defensive back Damar Hamlin's injury in 2023, when he suffered a cardiac arrest after a hit and had to be resuscitated on the field. For many Detroit fans, Norris and Hamlin's injuries were a reminder of another Lions player, Reggie Brown, who suffered a catastrophic injury in 1997 in a nationally televised game against the New York Jets. Brown was paralyzed and stopped breathing after making what appeared to be a routine tackle. He received CPR and was taken by ambulance to a hospital where he stayed for 3 weeks. Unlike Hamlin and Norris, Brown's injury was career ending. Now 50 years old, Brown revisits that December day in 1997 at the Pontiac Silverdome and provides a detailed account of what happened at the moment of impact, the hours, days, and weeks that followed, and shares what he's been doing since, including how he still deals with the painful effects of his injury on a daily basis. And I'd like to welcome to the channel Reggie Brown. Hey, Reggie, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, good morning. No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So before we get, obviously, your story has an unfortunate ending, but thankfully you're okay. And we're going to talk about that. But before we get to that, I want to kind of go back in time and start with your days back here in Austin at Reagan High School. And I was just reading some of the stats on your career and your senior year at Reagan, based on a Sports Illustrated article I read, you had 90 tackles that senior season and 37 sacks. So I just look at that number and it's mind blowing. So kind of just talk to me about your final year at Reagan and the recruitment and teams. I'm guessing the University of Texas might have been interested, but ultimately you went to A&M. So just talk to me about that senior season at Reagan and getting recruited.
Okay. Well, as far as the stats go, I really couldn't tell you. I couldn't validate it or invalidate it.
Right.
I just had a really good time, being with my teammates. Obviously, that was my senior year. Um, I didn't start playing football till my ninth grade year,
Right.
my freshman year in high school. Actually, one of my best friends, he told me, because I was still in middle school, he was a year in front of me. He was already at Reagan. He was like, "So when you get to Reagan next year, you're going to play football with us." And I was like, "Okay, sure. All right. Sounds good. Cool." Then obviously I kind of, from my freshman year to my sophomore year, I grew like maybe 6 inches and I put on like 40 pounds.
Right.
So I kind of turned into a football player. I guess he called the shot before I knew about it. Um, but fast forward to my senior year, it was probably obviously my most productive year. Trying to figure out the speed of the game, what I was really good at, or how can I help the team, how can I impact the game to my best of my ability. But just the high school years, kind of when you kind of you know you're with the guys that you kind of grew up with from your freshman year all the way up to your senior year. So
Right.
kind of being around those guys, I felt a little more comfortable as far as being as part of a true team.
Sure.
Um, but going out having fun Friday night, like most guys, in high school, you live for that Friday night moment. You eat something to talk about over the weekend. At school on the following Monday. So no, it was fun. It was fun. I got the opportunity to play, running back and linebacker in high school. So it kind of helped me on both sides of the ball. I know what the running back's thinking, and I could know what the linebacker's thinking when I was at running back. So it kind of goes hand in hand. As far as recruitment was concerned, probably started getting a couple letters here and there. Back when I used to use old snail mail.
Yep.
Yeah, probably my end of my sophomore year. Once I grew and the coaches started coming through the school, and it was kind of definitely, almost I think every school in the Southwest Conference back in those days. I wasn't the most heavily recruited person,
Right.
um, but like I say, I still had my fair share of opportunities, I guess. Yeah, Texas was definitely recruiting me. That was John Makovich's first year getting into town.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, he came by the house. I think the entire defensive staff was with him, trying to do like a they joined the recruiting probably a little later because they had just gotten to town, just gotten the job. A lot of my friends, a lot of my family wanted me to go to Texas, obviously because it was been more convenient for them. Not necessarily I'm the one that's going to have to play and go to class and everything, but once I started taking my recruiting trips, um, just A&M felt a lot more comfortable. I felt more of a bond with the team, I would say, from right off. There's not a lot of glitz and glamour as far as, hey, we can do this, we can do that. And it was more of, we work here. At the time when I got there, I think they had beat Texas 7 out of 8 years prior to me coming out of high school,
Yep.
and then I was 3-1 my 4 years there. So I mean, I think that obviously I made the right decision for myself,
Right.
despite being a kid growing up in Austin. Majority of my family was right there in Austin. Of course, they wanted me to stay a little closer to home, but in my mind, I'm going away, but it's 90 miles down the road. It's not really away. So
Sure.
it's like I'm gone, but I'm not gone.
Right.
I come home on the weekend if I want to. So it's kind of, to me, it was the best of both worlds. If I wanted to stay at home, Texas would have been easy to go to. My choice at the time probably was Oklahoma. That was my furthest I probably wanted to go away. Being a small town guy, small town kid. Um, but I think to me, I said the best of both worlds is A&M. I'm away, but I'm not really that far away, so my parents can still come to the games with no problem. Um, yeah, so I mean, felt I was very welcomed when I got to A&M. Everything's a little more, didn't feel, I hate to use the word, kind of pretentious. So how some recruiting trips can be.
Sure.
They say, all right, no, this is kind of who we are, what we do. This is where you can stay. It was no, let's go have this big rah-rah moment. So no, it's not going to disappear when you get here. This is kind of who we are. Your teammates don't sleep over here, and that's it. And for me, it fit my mindset. I'm not into a lot of extra stuff, so it kind of fit my personality, I would say.
Okay, so then you get to A&M in those first two seasons. I saw that you had like a total of 15 tackles, and then in that third season, your junior year, you had 67 tackles, and then your senior year, you had 90 tackles, 3 fumbles calls, 3 fumble recoveries, 2 interceptions, and 7 sacks, and you get on the All Southwest Conference first team. So talk to me about those final 2 years, specifically that senior year. Obviously, you found success. You understood the game, as you talked about. You really hadn't played it in high school till your freshman year, and you started really growing. And now here you are, first team All Southwest Conference linebacker with obviously interest from NFL teams. So talk to me about that final season at A&M.
I'll back. I'll start my first two seasons. My first two seasons, I'm pretty much behind All Americans.
Yeah,
So
that's
so
true.
you kind of had to wait your turn to get there. So my first 2 years, I was just on special teams. My sophomore year, I started getting the game spot duty. But like I say, at the time, A&M was linebacker U, so you're going to have to obviously compete every day um, to even get your opportunity to get on the field. And once I got on the field, my junior year, my first year starting, um, obviously I got more and more comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Fast forward to my senior year, everything kind of slowed down, so it was more of I quote unquote let loose. You know,
Right.
yeah, a lot of tremendous success. Like I said, I think I lost 6 games, um, 6 games during my time at A&M. So it was kind of I won't say it was definitely my most enjoyable experience my senior year. Like I
Right.
said, extremely productive on the field. I really wasn't focusing on hey, next year I'm going to the league or anything like that. It was more of I want to enjoy my time here. Um, enjoy my time here, and I just put all the effort that I can on the field, become the best player I could possibly be. To if I
Right.
get that opportunity, I'll be able to thrive at it. And obviously, fast forward to that draft, I kind of performed well at my East West Shrine game. the combine, did well, pro day, blew it out the water. And I was ready for draft day. It's like I don't really care where I go. I just want an opportunity to play, get my name called and, go from there.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Reggie, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'm good.
So no, so that's so you. I read how you performed really well. You talked about in the combine, and so then in that first round, you're drafted 17th overall in the 1996 NFL draft by the Detroit Lions. So, kind of tell me your mindset going in to that season, that rookie season, and kind of what you expected going in, because I know you were inactive. I think it was like the first 6 or 7 games that season. So just kind of tell me what you were expecting going to that rookie season in Detroit.
I'm getting ready for this, for the combine and draft and all that good stuff. But like on my draft phone call, it's more of, hey, we're going to pencil you in as our starting weak side linebacker. We're going to put you on these special teams. This is all this at the same time. Next week, you're going to have every mini camp, so we're going to fly you in the next week and get you going. But then the third preseason game, actually against the Oilers, back in the day, I tore my MCL. So I tore my MCL and I missed those first 6 games of the season. That's why I was inactive those first six
Okay.
games. Still wasn't fully recovered. I felt like I was kind of out there playing on, one knee, so to speak.
Sure.
But I still had some decent production. I think I was still within the 10 games I started. I was still top. I think I was third. Those 10 games, I was third in tackles. Those 6 games that I started. I mean, those 10 games that I started. So I still ended the season on a good note. We didn't really have that great a season.
Right.
Like I said, I lost 6 games at A&M in my 4 years, and I lost 11 games my rookie year in Detroit. So it was very different, as far as the winning on the field.
Right.
So, like I say, it was just trying to get used to making that transition from the college life to the professional life. Um, it wasn't that tough on the field. Obviously, it's a faster game. Um, but like I said, I was a little hindered that rookie year, but my second year came back fully healthy, had a lot of production that second year, which was obviously my final year. But I think I just started hitting my groove, so to speak. We had a coaching change from to Bobby Ross. Wayne Font's my first year to Bobby Ross my second year. Don't know if you remember Bobby Ross. He was more of a disciplinarian
Sure.
kind of coach. Well, I won't say disciplinarian, but more of a college style coaching environment. And you got, usually when you're in college, you're, you're in college, everybody's from anywhere from 17, 18 up to 21, 22, 23 in some instances. My rookie year in Detroit, I was 21. My oldest teammate was 38. My dad was 40 at the time. So it's like, you could have went to school with my dad, so it's kind of very different, very different. But like I say, I enjoyed my time in Detroit. I didn't know anything about Detroit before I got there.
Mm-hmm.
I used to always think back of all the teams I talked to at the combine, and I don't think Detroit said one word to me. So it was on draft day. It was really kind of caught me off guard. I was not expecting them. I guess that's the way you're supposed to do it at the time. Kind of keep your cards close to your chest. But I don't remember interviewing with Detroit. Not that I can recall. Or if I did interview, it was kind of quick. I guess I must have checked some boxes that they were looking for. They chose it. Chose me at 17.
So then we go through that year, Reggie, and you guys have a pretty good season. I know you finished 9-7 in the regular season, and then we get to that final game. You'd started those. I do have to point out in that 97 season, you started the 16 games and you had 2 interceptions, and both of them you returned for touchdowns. So obviously, when you had a nose for the ball, you had a nose for the ball to take it back to the end zone. So I thought that was a really interesting stat for you.
Yeah.
So then we go to that final game of the regular season. December 21st, 1997. I know you remember it well. There was a lot on the line that game, though. You guys were playing for a playoff berth against the Jets.
Yes.
Barry Sanders was looking to eclipse the 2,000-yard mark, which I think would have been the third running back to ever do that. So there was
Mhm.
a lot of, buzz around that specific game. So just talk to me about that game before the accident. Talk to me about the game and kind of how the vibe was in the game, with Barry on that big milestone moment and just the
Mhm.
possibility of or clinching a berth for the playoffs.
Yeah, it was a lot riding on the game. Like, it was a very exciting game. Kind of, if we win, we go to the playoffs. The Jets win, they're in the playoffs. We got Barry Sanders obviously trying to break the 2,000-yard mark. That was a big moment in his career. All the hard work he puts in, the great year he had. Like I said, it was my second year in the league. I won't say grew up watching Barry Sanders, but obviously a big Barry Sanders fan. So you want it for him. Wanted success for our team. On the Jets team at the time, two of my former A&M teammates are on the team, on the Jets team, Ray Mickens and Aaron Glenn, which is
Right.
now the head coach there. So,
Yeah.
I'm talking noise to them across the field. We're having a good time, because
Sure.
there's a lot on the line. We got Bill Parcells was the head coach. He's a legendary coach. So it's kind of like, it's more like if you want to play in a game, this is the game to play in. It's the only, I think might have been a Sunday night game. I can't really remember. So it's kind of a lot of people were watching it, obviously for those playoff implications, like you said. Um, then you get to I, I think it's either late in the third quarter, early fourth quarter. Um, refs had to stop the game a couple times till the crowd to quiet down while they had the ball. Um, that was like right before we had like a third and short. I want to say we got to make this stop and get off the field. Um, it was routine play, seen it a million times. I run up as a running play. I run up, make the tackle, end up missing the guy I'm trying to tackle because he kind of stumbled out of the backfield, so he kind of fell down. Um, one of my defensive linemen is pressing one of their offensive linemen backwards. The running back is going low right behind them. I come shoot in for a routine tackle, trying to do the blow up moment. End up hitting that offensive lineman that is getting pushed by my defensive lineman right in the small of his back with the top of my head. It's not, I wasn't tackling with my head down because my head is still up dealing with the running back, but didn't see them coming. So it's like they're 600 pounds, it's my 240 pounds, and obviously, they're going to win that battle. I ended up knocking myself out of the game. I knocked the lineman out the game that I hit in the back. He flew out the game. Then I remember kind of rolling over, but I know I can't. I noticed I can't move. I'm trying to get up because I know we stopped them. Trying to move. One of my teammates, Antonio Lunding, I still remember it vividly. Him standing over me, telling, "Hey, we stopped him. Let's get off the field." And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I can't breathe. He said, "Come on, let's get up, get up." He said, "I said, no, I can't breathe." At that time, right when my head hit the guy in the back, and like I said, I rolled on the ground, my oxygen got kind of cut off. Um, and so it's we kind of, a lot of people don't realize when you have certain spinal cord injuries, obviously your spinal cord controls everything. It controls your breathing also.
Sure.
So as soon as that happened, like I say, I'm out. I could feel myself kind of gasping for air. Then a kind of sense of calm kind of takes place. And I can tell, I can still see, but like I said, I can't talk at the time. After I kind of gasp those two, I can't move, I can't breathe kind of moment. So to make calling for the trainer. Then after that, I kind of go into this calm of like, it's almost like, somebody gave me a sedative, like I'm about to go to sleep. Um, and I got real calm. Next thing you know, what I hear later is they, cut my jersey off me, took my helmet off, gave me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, kind of bring me back, get my pulse back. So it kind of turned a kind of bluish color, which I can't really even imagine what, what they witnessed, their end. But like I say, kind of the next thing you know, I wake up at the first hospital I'm at. Um, and kind of think I'm throwing up everywhere. Excuse me if I get too graphic. Got to throwing up everywhere. And the first thing I say is, hey, you have to go pick my girlfriend up. Because my girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now. She played basketball at A&M. So she's flying in. I think they had a tournament in Anchorage, Alaska. So she was flying from Anchorage to Detroit. So if we lose the game, she's gonna come visit me. So if we lose the game, I'm gonna drive back to Texas. She was gonna ride with me. Win the game, she's gonna visit, put her back on the flight, send her back to Texas. Um, but like I said, I wake up, she's on. This is back when Continental was the airline.
Right.
Hey, she's on Continental flight. This is the first thing I think of when I wake up. Like I say, literally vomiting everywhere. It's all right, I got to pick my girlfriend up. She's on Continental flight. Da 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 da. They ended up going to get her. Ended up bringing her back to the hospital. Second hospital I got moved to. First hospital I went to was in Pontiac, Michigan, right near the stadium at the time. Then transport me in an ambulance to Henry Ford Hospital. It's like the longest 30-minute drive I've ever been on in an ambulance. I hear the ambulance going, sirens going crazy, and I'm still kind of throwing up everywhere. Can't move my body, but I can kind of I feel myself heaving. That's the only kind of muscles I had going on. They get to the second hospital. And this whole time, I'm kind of going in and out of consciousness, kind of waking up, going back to sleep, waking up, nothing's going on, go back to sleep. Then they kind of get me. Next thing I can remember, kind of putting this brace on me, like a halo brace, what it was, which I had to wear for like 3 months. I remember them kind of screwing that into me. Then I remember her walking in, like say, oh, these are kind of like little glimpses of time, little pieces that I can kind of remember over the years. Kind of real lifetime movie, Sunday afternoon movie kind of situation.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of, so when she gets there, I remember her walking in, and the first thing I do, I apologize to her because I wasn't there to pick her up, you know. So then I remember going back out again. Then I remember I think it's the next morning, I wake up and they tell me surgery was successful. And I'm like, what surgery? I have no idea because I'm still in this kind of woozy kind of stage of I know something's going on, I know something serious. Just looking at people's faces and they're telling me how much of a miracle I am at that moment. Um, so like say, they had to give me like say they had to fuse my top two vertebrae together. Because they couldn't tell, I guess from what I've heard, I couldn't tell overnight kind of where my injury was because my vertebrae shifted, it hit my spinal cord and went back into place. They're like, we got to go in there and find where it's at to fuse them together to make sure they won't ever shift again.
Right.
I think at that time I didn't know. Yeah, I think I was told we won the game, so that was a great thing. We're going to the playoffs, but I ended up, obviously I had to watch the playoff game the next week from the hospital bed,
Right.
which kind of sucked. So I say I made the playoffs, but I wasn't in the playoffs.
Right.
So yeah. So I mean, all that kind of areas, kind of like I say, little flashes of like memories. There's big chunks of things I don't remember
Right.
as far as that situation, and even chunks I don't remember after it happened, like from my career, from high school, from A&M. It's always given me some kind of memory issues. Like when I'm around my friends, yeah, but nowadays I'm 50. So it's like, is it 50-year-old memory loss? But I was like, no, I've been that same way since I was 23.
Right.
So it's kind of like, all right, because I was with some friends actually from my Reagan friends about a month ago when I was back in Austin. They will bring up certain things we did in high school or certain stuff I did athletically or they heard I did. And I was like, I have no clue what you're talking about. It's like, I kind of remember something about it, but A lot of times, I'm gonna say a lot. Sometimes I have no clue, what they're talking about. So I did, which is flattering, but it's like they enjoy the memory more than I did. So
So let me ask you real quick, Reggie. So after the injury happens, I know you talked about Antonio London comes over and asks you to get up and all that. And so
uh,
you talked about the flashes. So then you're in the hospital. So can you remember, or has anyone told you, your wife or anybody else, like who came and visited you in the hospital? Did Coach Ross come visit you? Did players come visit you while you were in
oh
the
yeah,
hospital initially?
I, I probably couldn't name a teammate that didn't come visit me.
Okay.
Um, I was the entire coaching staff, I believe, came at some point. They brought me a bunch of movies, but then the nurses had to put some of my teammates out because my blood pressure would shoot up because we would, be joking and laughing. No, so everybody, I won't say everybody did. Mr. Ford did, which yeah, I think he's one of the first people I saw. I remember when I woke up this at I think I was still at the first hospital at that time.
Okay.
Because I remember waking up, I remember Bobby Ross was there. See, I don't know the time period where it landed. So Bobby Ross was there, our head coach, and then Mr. Ford was there. And I was looking at him, but you don't really see Mr. Ford too often.
Right.
So and I'm in a state of my mind at that point. I was like, I know this person, but I don't really recognize this person. Because I would say my mind was kind of everywhere. And I was like, oh, that's Mr. Ford. Then I kind of speak a little bit. Like, oh, it just took a couple minutes for it to click. I'm still trying, I'm really kind of zoned out of a lot of stuff.
Of
No
course.
telling how many medications I was on at the time. Like I said, but that's why I get the bits and pieces of, then I got to piece things together later on as people tell me stories over the years.
Right. So then you stayed in the hospital for how long?
I was in Detroit for 3 weeks in the hospital.
So
And then
kind
I
of
was, go ahead.
kind of walk me through that process, because I know where there was the real emotional press conference, but just kind of talk to me, because I remember when we talked before, you talked about, you had to learn how to do all these things over
Oh, that,
again like you were a young kid. So kind of talk to me about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's so, obviously when I first woke up that next day, I couldn't move anything. I could speak, I could look around, but as far as any kind of movement, it wasn't there. I could fidget a little bit, which, they were the doctors were so excited about that moment, I guess, because, they gave me the percentages of kind of a person with my injury, like a 2% chance you ever walk again.
Mhm.
I think I don't remember all the statistics. I want to say it's like 80% would die right when it happened. There's so many that wouldn't be able to walk or quadriplegic, and then there's like that 2% that can walk. And I was part of that 2%. Um, but being in the hospital that entire time, it was more of you had to relearn everything as far as I know how to brush my teeth, but I couldn't physically do it. I'm looking at, my hands and I can't control them. That was kind of probably the most frustrating part. I used to tell stories of like my face would itch and I would have to work my hand up to my face and then let it go, just let it fall. Then I start scratching, at that point. But that first day, I knew I could fidget a little bit, and throughout the day, it kind of started coming back um, quickly, I would say. But there's still, the toughest part wasn't the big motor skills, more the fine motor skills. Dealing with my hands. My hands are still numb to this day from my elbows or fingertips, my knees down to my toes. They don't have a lot of sensation in them. Um, but yeah, we pretty much had to learn. Obviously, had to walk again. I think this 2 days after surgery, they wanted me to get out of bed for the first time. Let's see if we can stand. I can move my legs and everything, move my arms. They said, see if he can stand. So I got up and I stood. They was like, oh, okay, that was a big thing. Another check mark. They
Sure.
said, okay, let's see if you can take a couple steps. I think I walked maybe 10 feet forward and turned around 10 feet back to the bed. And it felt like I ran a marathon, which I never have. But I was so winded. It's like, oh, and everybody's going crazy, how much progress I was making. Um, but like I say, but as far as I had to learn how to feed myself without making a mess, brushing my own teeth. Yeah, so it really went back to a infant type stage. But I knew how to do everything. But as far as having control of my body to do so, it like I say, it had to take a while to come back. Um, then they had me lifting, you know, small weights. When I say small weights, they had me try to bench a broomstick, and I couldn't get it off my chest because I couldn't. It felt like 400 pounds, like
Sure.
at that time, But like I say, but over time, it kind of came back. I would say 6 months, I was pretty functional. As far as like, 3 months, I got the halo off, but during that whole time, it's going, okay, I don't need anybody brushing my teeth for me. I don't need anybody trying to feed me. That happened over a few days. And I think even while that 3 weeks I was still in the hospital, I told my girlfriend at the time, I said, I think they have a Little Caesars downstairs. I want some Little Caesars. Let's go down there. And then I just walked down, got on the elevator, walked down there, and people are going crazy because they see me. Because at that time, I'm still over the news, doing updates on how I'm doing, everything like that. But I was like, I can't stay in this room too much longer. I have to get up and walk around a little bit. So
Right.
that was probably the second or third week when I finally let me. Well, they didn't really let me. I kind of went downstairs on my own. Um,
I,
like I
I was
said, but
Go ahead.
but over time, like I say, it came back fairly quickly, but it got to a level where it kind of just stayed there, and I've been there kind of ever since, so to speak. Not like I could pick up new skills the older I get or anything like that. So, now I have to figure out, is it 50-year-old me, or is it, stuff from my injury? 99% of it stuff from my injury, you know.
So that right after that, when you were in the hospital, I remember when we talked before, you mentioned how you could see on ESPN and they were telling the reports where your playing career was over. So kind of talk me through that.
Okay. Yeah. So that was, I would kind of see the different, I'm watching TV because I don't have a lot to do during the day. So I'm, watching ESPN, the team's still getting ready to play, the playoff game that next week,
Mhm.
and I kind of, keep it up with my other friends, and I see on the ticker, or they kept coming across the ticker, then they end up going to a story about me, you know, saying I had this career-ending injury. I actually had family in the room, and I was like, why do they keep saying that? Because like I say, everybody knew except me at the time. I was like, why do they keep saying, for any injury? I just got to get this thing off me. I'll start working back out, and I'll be, because I've always been able to bounce back from any kind of injury. I didn't know, I still didn't know how serious it was.
Right.
Um, but then that I think my family nominated my girlfriend to say, hey, you need to tell them. You'd probably be the best person to tell them that, you know, nobody's going to let them play football anymore. And that was kind of you know, one of those moments of like, are y'all serious? But this is what I do. I don't know if y'all have heard, but I'm pretty good at it. So it's like just like that, it's over. Like, I used to always say I'd rather, have been cut or have told, I wasn't good enough or just wasn't enough to, to make the team or something like that. But no, to have it, to be performing at a high level, and then all of a sudden, it's kind of that lights out moment. Um, you know, a lot of frustration kind of over the years of kind of how it ended.
Right.
I would, people would say, hey, luckily, fortunately, you got, an opportunity to play, even to make it. I was like, no, it's not about, it's about playing. Yeah, don't get me wrong, but it's about, I was good at it. You don't, nobody ever says, hey, you're a surgeon, you broke your hands, now you can't perform surgery anymore. Like, well, but that's what I do. That's what I was trained to do. That's kind of what I put so much emphasis on. So now it made me turn real human real fast, which I never had to experience that, in the, not it's definitely not athletic world.
Right.
It's like, hey, but I'm at that time, my mentality was, I was more linebacker than I was human. but then I had to go no more linebacker, and now you're all human, and you're gonna get all the human stuff that comes with it, as far as all the emotions, because if you live a certain, you play at a certain level, it's kind of everybody's accustomed to asking you about football, not about the human side, not about the things that go on in life. It's more of, you ready for the season? How's the team looking? That's at every level. You're ready for it. You've been working out, you've been training. How good a year you think you're going to have? And so have all those kind of questions are gone. It's how you doing? How's your neck? I got more questions about my neck, than about are you ready to play? Which kind of I was not used to, I would say. So
Okay,
it took a
so
little while.
go ahead.
That's it. So it took a little while to get used to.
Okay, so then there was a press conference, and I know you were
Mm-hmm.
kind of talking about how you went downstairs to the Little Caesars, but before that,
Mm-hmm.
no one really knew about your ability to walk. And
Mm-hmm.
then they have that press conference where they're describing, kind of what happened to you and the injury, and then you get rolled in a wheelchair, they
Mm-hmm.
stop you, and then you get up and walk. And it's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who I read said there wasn't a dry eye in the room. So walk me through that moment of, going in there and the anticipation of the audience, the news crews,
Mm-hmm.
and what happened when you walked in or when you stood up and walked over to the podium.
Gotcha. Well, from what I can recall, I never watched the press conference, so I don't know what happened prior to me walking out. Um, I knew we were having a press conference.
Mhm.
I remember, say, hey, we're going to roll you down there and, let you get up and show everybody you can walk. Because at that time, it's like maybe my third week in the hospital. So I'm about to leave at that point. So they want to do a press conference before me leaving.
Mhm.
Um, so at that point, anybody that was in the hospital probably had saw me walk at a certain point. But as far as the national media is concerned, because I was kind of, you had to know my password to come visit me. They kind of kept me under wraps a lot. I was in the intensive care unit, so you're not going to be able to get up there and so like, we're going to bring you in, let you walk to podium if you want to say a few words. You can say a few words. I said, okay. When I got there, I'm thinking, people know that I can walk already. You know, I didn't think it was that big of a moment, like you say. Then I can tell like, oh, y'all didn't know. So it was kind of, yeah, I think they tried to made it a little more dramatic than it kind of had to be. Of course. But like I said, I was fine with it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I got to stay, up to the podium and said a few words. Can't quite remember what I said. Um, probably just thankful for still being there. Thankful for people even caring, you know, about what I was going through or what's going on. 'Cause in my mind, football season's still going on. So it's
Right.
like, because I don't, I never tried to. I've never been one to, I guess, have any kind of limelight or on you, any kind of attention on you. I was kind of always been a background kind of person. I'll go do my job, but if you tell me I did a good job, cool. I'm not going to tell you I did a good job. It's more of it's kind of way my family have always been. Kind of you do the work, you'll get some credit later. So just if you do your best, good things will come. So it's kind of always been my mantra. If I let people that like to do certain things, I let them do those certain things. If they like to do the interviews, I let them do the interviews. If they like to talk, go for it. I don't have to be that. I don't have to be the spokesperson. But people knew when I did speak, it was probably might want to listen. I would say might want to pay attention a little bit. If I had something to say, like, oh, he's speaking, he must have something on his mind, I guess.
Okay, so then after that press conference, you fly back to Texas and you go through rehab. So kind of talk me through that because I have here, it was March of '98 that you got the halo taken off. So
Mhm.
obviously there was an extensive rehab process for you to get you fully? I mean, obviously you said you're not fully recovered even till to this day, but what was the process like for rehabilitation?
Okay, well, there's no such thing as full recovery. Not in this case. It was more of the same stuff. I went to Tier here in Houston. Um, I was there. I can't remember how long I was even there, but it was more of kind of just repetition of fine motor skills, kind of anything to help manipulate my hands. Because I had to learn there's certain ways I had to do things. At that point, it's not like I could, you know, do things the same process I did before. So it's more of, you got to watch a certain way, you got to sleep a certain way, you got to, I could visibly see my hands do something, but I can't really control how I'm doing it. So it's more of had to adopt a more patient and grow a little more patience in doing things. Yeah, there are certain things I just can't do. No matter how many times I've tried, uh, like screwing in small things, even counting money. It's my hands are terrible. Like I say, but going through that rehab process was more or less full body. I was doing a lot of. I remember them doing a lot of stretching, a lot of different kind of experimental things with me, which was great because I was an athlete. So it's like, okay, I have a workout plan. This is my workout plan. Okay, let's get these things accomplished. So I'm exact. It's kind of the stuff I've been doing the majority of my life, just on a smaller scale. I'm not doing power cleans, squats, or anything like that. It's more
Right.
I'm doing these tedious little things trying to get my hands back to moving, and I've probably dropped so many things in my life in my lifetime. Like I said, I just don't have any true sensation in my hand, so I'm good for not knowing something is in my hand. Um, thing I tell a lot of people is like I'll lay in bed watching TV, I can have the remote control in my hand, then all of a sudden I can't feel it, but it's still in my hand. So I'll get up to go do something, and I'll sling the remote control across the room because I just forgot it's there. A lot of times I have to see it. It's not like I can't stick my hand in a certain thing. Okay, I'm reaching for this in the cabinet drawer. No, I have to open the drawer. There it is, and look for it, and I can pick it up. As far as it's just different. It's kind of hard to describe a lot of times. Um, like I say, it's just more of I would say if you go through your life with gloves on, real thick gloves, it's kind of what it is. Kind of like,
Right.
but like okay, let me see. You lose that sense of touch. I would say, but it also heightens my other senses as far as like hearing. I've been blessed now with the best hearing on earth, but it's only the irritable stuff. It's not like stuff, not like I can hear you speak. It's just small little noises that'll drive you crazy. Oh God, it's but like I say, but that's been my life for since I was 23 years old. So yeah, so it makes me a little more irritable. I still deal with a lot of chronic pain, stuff. I can look like I'm doing fine, but really I'm in my back's on fire over here right now. So it's kind of yeah, it's just my new way of living, I guess. Kind of adjust over the years. Not getting any younger.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the physical limitations and trying to get everything better there, but you re-enrolled back at A&M. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember you talking about you enrolled in a business math class and it was
It
just a
was tough.
struggle. So just talk to me about the mental side of it.
Yeah, I would say like I said the biggest hang up when I first went back to A&M. Even the doctor wrote a letter to the school saying that I'm going to have some limitations as far as memory retention is concerned. Yeah, so I say that first class I got enrolled in was a business math class. I was trying to go back and finish my degree. So I go in it, we had a study group. I'm like a regular old student now. I don't have practice to worry about. I don't have work that I have to be at. Nobody's coming to check my classes. So I am entrenched into trying to finish this degree. And I would, you know, go to meet my study group, try to study my best all night long. The next day I go take a test. I don't recognize anything on it. I literally went up to the teacher and said, I can't do it. And I handed a blank test back to her. She said, can you even try? I said, trust me, I said, I've tried. I said, I knew it last night. And even my study group was like, no, he really knew it last night. But when that 24 hours later to go take the test, brain just blanks out. I could read something, read an entire page, like I have no idea what I just read. It's gotten better, over the years. But like when I first went back to school, it was like I wasn't ready. I think it might have been a little too soon. The effort was there. I didn't really have anything else to do. But then probably by that fall, I could grasp a little more and a little more and a little more. As far as when I first went back, I went back that first session, and I was like, can't do it. Like, nah, like I said, literally handed her a blank test right back. Even though I would do the quizzes and the daily assignments, if you teach it, I can comprehend it, I can do it. But ask me the same thing the next day, I wouldn't have a clue. Like I never saw it before. Yeah, so that was kind of the biggest moment. And as far as the other mental side of it, I would say the toughest time is, when all my teammates started going back to training camp, and I'm going to class. Even back at A&M, I'm, you know, like I didn't really go to the games when I was there. It's kind of like I was trying to, get away from, get away from, I say get away from the game because, I was still going to get, asked about, how I'm doing, how I'm feeling, especially walking around this campus. But it was a struggle. It was a good struggle as far as, battling, the depression mixed with the chronic pain and all kind of other stuff that was going on. So it's kind of, it's just with me being all of my draft class with my guys at A&M being the first one in the league, technically first one drafted and the first one out. I was like, hey, had a grand opening, grand closing moment. So it's kind of tough to deal with, but I don't think, but in my strong ego moment was kind of, I'm I don't know anything about depression. I'm not depressed. I'm not sad. I'm mad. I'm mad and frustrated by my situation. But as far as, yeah, it took me oh, probably a good little over 10 years to finally seek kind of a therapist, kind of some mental kind of health kind of help, you know.
Right.
I think I was right when we first moved to Houston, and I was up one night, and they're talking about a sports psychologist on TV. And I'm like, well, wonder what a sports psychologist is. Okay, they know mainly about athletes. It's like a little special I think I was watching. I said, tomorrow, I don't know what made me think. I said, tomorrow, I'm going to find a sports psychologist. And I Googled one, first person that popped up. Said, I'm going to give her a call. Gave her a call, left a message. She called me back. And this was 13 years ago, I want to say.
Okay.
And we speak every other Tuesday. We've been doing it for 13 years now. So, but like I say, it took me a long time to, I think it's a difference in a natural transition out of football, but
Sure.
mine was so, quick,
Hmm.
so it kind of jarred me, so to speak. And, and I'd say it's like a PTSD kind of,
Right.
definitely a withdrawal kind of symptoms I had to kind of go through. But now it's more of, even if I didn't get hurt, once I probably hit 30-ish, my goal was to play 10 years in the league. So like, once I aged out, I was like, okay, well, I probably wouldn't be playing anymore, at that particular age. So that kind of started, I would say that was right around the same time I started talking to my therapist. So it kind of helped in that moment. So, okay, I would have been out of the league already. So it's that started the healing process, I would say. It started, then when you start verbalizing stuff, it kind of makes it easier instead of holding everything. I'm a natural introvert anyway, so I kind of naturally hold a lot of stuff in. A lot of people don't really know what I'm thinking half the time. I'll throw a curveball or two out there just to show I have a different side of my personality. But for the most part, I I held a lot of stuff in, you know, and then kind of, you're not gonna say everything to your friends because you don't want that judgment. You don't want your friend looking at you a certain way. So it's more I can speak to this non-biased person, this person I don't know. Even I've had, suggested a couple of my old teammates, hey, start seeing a therapist if you feeling a certain way, give it a shot. And my teammates like, I don't think I have anything to talk about. I said, okay, well, try it out. Let me know. He called me back. He said, the lady said hello, and I spoke for 45 straight minutes. So it's like he said, I just had diarrhea at the mouth. He said, I didn't know I had all that in me. I said, yeah, man, it helped me for sure.
Yeah.
And like I say, I still speak with her every other Tuesday. We have a standing appointment. That way, it'll kind of help me level off my stress bucket. Because like I said, I deal with a lot of chronic pain. Even though a lot of times, I don't really show that I'm in pain because it's the pain you can't see. It's not like no cast for for your for every part of your body. So it's more or less like no, you hear me grunt and get up, or if I turn my mood, because it feels like somebody literally has a ice pick in the back of your neck, and it's kind of just slowly turn it as the day goes on, until I can, get to a point of, um, you know, get in the shower and kind of just let the water hit me, go lay down, go to sleep. Um, like I say, but it has been a struggle, it's over the years. It's kind of, but kind of like I say that verbalizing, saying, hey, letting somebody know I'm in pain, or
Right.
hey, I'm not in the best mood. It kind of helps. Definitely helps my kids. If I don't let them know, they'll be like, oh, Dad's not in a very good mood. Let's stay away. Let's get out the way.
Right.
But like I say, I try to deal with it as best I can without taking the many prescriptions I have.
Right. So let's back up real quick because obviously you've had all these struggles, but you did get your degree in the spring of '99 in agriculture economics from A&M.
Yeah.
And then I remember you telling me that you had some options to choose from because the Lions owner, Mr. Ford, said that you could go scout and or you
Yeah.
could do the Ford dealership program. So kind of walk me through those processes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I gave it a shot as far as the scouting is concerned. Like I said, I still wasn't in a physical or mental state to do it. Like I said, I went out a couple times and did it, and it just wasn't anything. I could see it would keep me close as far as I wanted to stay within the league. As far as if I wanted to end up coaching, I had opportunities to do that. But at the time, there's not a whole lot outside of playing that I wanted to do, and I didn't know physically, with the demand on doing it, as far as getting in the planes and driving and going to these different colleges. It's not anything I wanted to do. Um, and so the other side of it was the Ford dealership training program. So as I did that for quite a number of years, but once I got finished with it, I was like, do I want to? Is that something I want to do? Is something I want to invest in? The dealer I did my training with, he was like, hey, I know you're going through a lot of different things. You don't have to rush. You can stay here. I can find stuff for you to do here. We can do different promotions. You know, um, which I did that for a number of years, but I still wasn't. Nothing could give me that same thrill or satisfaction I had with playing. It's a bad thing to say, but it's just kind of that natural high you get from your adrenaline rush. It's nothing. I don't get excited about too many things. I'm not really a rah rah type guy anyway. But nothing give me that same satisfaction. Would see people at doing the dealership training process, the different things that would get them excited. I'm like, okay, I'd rather be in front of 80,000 people, not what we got. We had a great meeting, so it's kind of, just kind of nothing really gave me that same thrill, I would say. Then like I said, then I would have days where I'd call a day. I just not in the mental mood to even be around people. So that kind of was not necessarily a struggle, it's kind of a hurdle, I would say. I still have those bouts of when I want to be around people and when I don't. A lot of times I will opt not to, if I don't have enough, um, I would say enough warning, and my wife comes home and says, hey, we have to go so and so. Do you want to go? No. I'm going to probably say no if it's too soon.
Right.
Yeah, I like to go. I have to think all the way through a lot of different things if I want to do them or not, or if I think I can be around certain things. But back to your original question, as far as the scouting was concerned, it just wasn't for me. Because I don't think I'm a good person, good judge of who's going to be what.
Right.
So you're talking to a person that went from starting playing football in ninth grade to being a first round draft pick. So my acceleration, I guess, was kind of quick. I guess so I can't predict what the next future, star is going to be. Either to me is you can either play or you can't play. So that kind of wasn't for me. And then from the business side, from the dealership standpoint, I liked being around the people there, as far as the owner and the upper management folks. Like I say, but that was not. I didn't grow up in the dealership business, so it was kind of. So I opted not to do it. So no, I was like, nah, I'm just going to stay in this retirement mode. Just kind of. I tell people all the time, I say, what do you do now? I said, I go to the doctor. That's what I do. He said, you name it, I probably got a doctor for it, to be honest with you. Yeah. Even I just stopped doing rehab not too long ago. I went for a few months because I was having some issues with my lower back. I'm on the fast track of an older body. That's what it feels like.
Right.
So I can wake up one morning and my ankle's hurting. Like I know I have not moved fast enough for my ankle to be hurting. So it's like, where'd that come from? The next day it won't be. So it's like, my natural state nowadays is, like I say, your spinal cord controls everything. So if you have glitches in your spinal cord, you never know what kind of signal it's going to send where, especially with pain signals from the brain. Okay, what's really hurting on you? To me, a lot of times I can say, oh, I give you a long laundry list. Like if I go to the doctor, like, okay, so what's going on? That's like, well, slow down. Like you repeat that, like yeah, you can start from my head and go down, so but I don't like being that person who I feel like I'm complaining about the pain. That's I tolerate it. Don't get me wrong, but it's like I never knew the true definition of what pain was. I would always tell doctors, I'm uncomfortable. That would be my word. I said, no, that's pain. It was like, okay, would you go? You think you need some medication? I said, no, I don't need medication. I said, but I can see you grimacing right now, just sitting there. I was like, I grimace every day, 100 times a day. It's kind of just that's kind of I know who I am now, but still kind of gotta deal with it, I guess.
So I was just curious because the last time we talked, when I did that story for the Detroit newspaper, I did not realize, it was a miss on my part, but your brother played in the Super Bowl in 2007.
Yeah,
So kind of talk to me because obviously it's really interesting, this dynamic, I think, of your family and your life. You're this high level athlete, you're playing at the top of your game. It gets immediately abruptly cut short with the terrible injury. And
mm-hmm.
then, almost, I guess it's 10 years later, you're watching your brother play in the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl title in an improbable win over the Patriots, which no one thought they were going to beat. And he wins
Yeah.
that. So kind of tell me like was it some mixed emotions or what was that like for you watching your brother win a Super Bowl?
Uh, yeah, it was great. see, me and my brother are 10 years apart, and it's just us two. So we always say our mom was two for two. My mom and dad were two for two with NFL players. Like I say, but I was the first one starting in ninth grade. So it's like not like we had this long history of playing little league and working all the way up. My little brother played little league. So no, I mean it was cool. So right when I finished in the league, right when I came back home, my brother was starting ninth grade. Um, then we got, there's always lots of comparisons. Pretty sure for a long period of time he probably heard you're gonna be like your brother as far as playing. Um, like I say, he ended up going to Tyler Junior College out of high school. Well, let me back up. So yeah, at high school he did really well, played corner and safety and wide receiver. So he had natural ability. Yeah, we pretty much almost everybody in our family has a strong work ethic. It's kind of what we do. Um, I went up to Tyler Junior College. I'm going to University of Arizona. Drafted, I'm gonna say seventh round by Giants. Ended up keeping him. That was his rookie year. I think he ended up starting 5 games his rookie year in that Super Bowl run, which was cool. I would say there wasn't any mixed emotions. More excited for him, but I was still trying to guide him through the NFL process, from going through the draft process and combine process, all that. I remember one time he asked me, he said, "Well, who did you have?" He said, "I know I have you to ask all kind of questions to. Who did you have to ask?" I said, "Nobody." Me and my friends are kind of figuring it out on our own. We had each other. But I kind of can break it down. Hey, when you get there, this is what's going to happen. This is what you need to go do. Because I wasn't too far removed from it. But like I say, even back up to me, even going to A&M, I didn't really have nobody in my family I could say, hey, when I get on the college campus, what do I expect? They were more like, good luck, you know. Like I said, but back to my brother, no, he had a real good run that year. It was he's more of overall just proud of him, proud of him and his situation. Proud for our family. We had another person in the league, and more or less, hey, here's your opportunity. You got to play, longer than I did. So make sure you enjoy it while you're doing it. It was his first time in New York when he got there, um, so yeah, no, I mean, it's my first and only Super Bowl I've ever attended. You know, but like I say, it was a great time for him. He still has his Super Bowl ring. I have a couple other friends that have Super Bowl rings, but it was always gave me something to do as far as keeping up with his career, keeping up watching him. And I was more, like I said, we're 10 years apart, so I was more of a uncle brother, I guess. So it's like, because he was 7 when I left home. So like I said, but it was like, a lot of people don't know or realize that kind of we were brothers, because like I said, we're 10 years apart. So I like to bring him up, often as far as like, hey, it wasn't just me in the family. I have a brother that played also. So it's kind of like tell kids, hey, I kind of know what I'm talking about sometimes. You know, a little experience in the family. Yeah.
Okay, so then in 2009, you left the auto business. You started working at that Manor Excel Academy. And
Hmm.
then a couple years later, you moved to Houston with your wife and you guys started the Charter Academy, the Legacy School of Sports Sciences. So
Yeah.
I remember talking to you about that. And so now here we are 14 years later and it's still going strong. So kind of talk to me about the whole prospects of doing it and now seeing it all these years later being successful.
Gotcha. Well, it's this school year is year 8. It took her several years. When we first moved here, she was still coaching.
Okay.
And I said, I need to sit down somewhere. So, so we moved to Houston, I'm going in full retirement mode at this point. I think, so she got the idea of the school of legacy, of watching me kind of go through what I went through as far as transitioning out of sports. So she said, what if we created a school where, the kids can have a plan B, still be involved in sports, but at some point, the ball's going to stop bouncing. you're not going to make any more tackles. So it's kind of opened their eyes up to the careers within athletics.
Hmm.
It's not just about being the player itself. There's only so many players at the actual game. But there's way more employees there, putting this production on. So it's more of kind of, exposing them, different things, the sports medicine side, sports management, media side, even coaching, trying to have them, okay, so what are you going to do? Because, everybody's not going to play after high school. Everybody's not going to play after college. You know, make it to whatever league you're going to make it to. It's only going to be that small part of your life. So I'd say that's kind of where she got the idea from. So so it's like 540 kids, I want to say she has here at the school, from 6th through 12th grade. So both of our boys attended. Our oldest ended up finishing from here, and he got a scholarship, football scholarship to Tulane, which he just finished this past spring. I'm sorry, this past fall was his senior year.
Hmm.
So he's still trying to, have that NFL moment. They'll wait on a phone call, or he'll do the trial for the UFL and maybe the CFL. But he just wants to continue to play.
Sure.
It's not like, I try to tell them, do as much as you can do for as long as you can do, if that's what you want to do.
Right.
Football is not really a sport. You be halfway in, halfway out. So you got to know if you're going to be in it, you really got to be in it. So like I say, our oldest just finished, got his degree at Tulane. We have two boys. Our youngest, he's a senior this season. He plays football. He's committed to Texas A&M also. So he'll be there this next spring. He'll be there as a wide receiver. Um, so it's kind of exciting to see them. Like I said, my wife played basketball at A&M too. So obviously we're familiar with the school. We know where to park. We know where to go. Now I don't have to learn a new town, new city, or anything like that. So like I say, it's exciting to watch the school grow from year one, because we've put in not just football. We have probably more kids playing collegiate basketball than we have playing football. In one year we had six or seven Division I basketball players on the same team.
Wow.
Went to all different schools across the country. Like I said, when we first started, a young man, he graduated 2 years ago. He's here from Boston College. Saw one last night, ended up going to North Texas. He was at our football scrimmage last night. So got a lot of kids, but like I say, it's more of teaching them outside the box thinking as far as what can possibly be next, and to appreciate what those other people that are around your sport kind of appreciate what they do.
Sure.
The player itself, you get an itinerary, told where to be, told where to go. Not a whole lot of thinking to it. You outside of your sport, you kind of herd the cattle and okay, y'all are finna go play your sport.
Right.
But there's a lot of planning and organizing that goes into it. Which I wasn't even aware of. The details that go into things. I would observe certain things when I played, but it wasn't my job description to learn them and see what actually everything goes. But a lot of people don't even pay attention. I would at least acknowledge, the things that are going on. So it's more of you have a career like mine. You first round draft pick, you've done in 2 years. Okay, what are you going to do now? But like I say, I was not saying I didn't think about life after football. I just wasn't ready for life after football. Not that quick.
Right.
I thought I had some time. And then once my injury happened and all the other side effects that come with it, it's kind of, like I say, I'm on this fast track of aging. That's what it feels like. I don't know what a normal average 50-year-old feels like. I guarantee they don't feel the way I feel on a daily basis.
So obviously your wife's doing the school and you're there, but what is a day in the life of Reggie Brown like now? Do you go to the school? Are you working at school?
Yeah, well, I don't have any roles or responsibilities at the school. So,
Okay.
I kind of hate to use the term come and go as I need to, as necessary. She likes when I come here. I think it's more of She likes me to get out of the house. She has some kind of social being, but like I only be around so many kids, for so long. I'll go walk a couple laps around the school building, and I'll come back to her office. Sometimes I'll come out here, and sometimes I won't. I've been here every day this week. This is our first week of school, but next week they might not see me. Especially, like I say, we only got our youngest son playing now. He has his own vehicle. So it's not like I'm driving anybody to school or anything like that. But the school is doing, it's doing really well. Um, as long as the kids understand, I think it's what's preached on a lot here is kind of, um, the goal and the role of the school in the kids' lives. But I'm kind of the example that she likes to point out as I walk around campus. You know, it's almost a don't be like him moment, so to speak.
Right.
Or a lot of people want to know kind of where'd you get the idea for the school at. And she'll, give them my breakdown, my story, um, and then you got to use certain different ways to teach student athletes. There's some of them are not normal. Some of them, because a lot of times what our teachers will do, a lot of the teachers here are former players and coaches.
Right.
So they, some of them have a lot of, pretty strong athletic backgrounds. So as far as saying, you say you want to do this, okay, I've done that, so you might want to listen to me, a little bit. So it's like, they don't really debate with me too much, especially about football. So okay, so it's like I say, it's good for me, according to my wife, it's good for me to be here a lot of times, but then there's times I just like physically or mentally can't do it.
Right.
Like I said, when you asked me about this interview, I woke up with a migraine headache this morning. Like, oh, come on. Of all days, I was like, okay, we do Friday, 9:30 in the morning. I said, okay. I said, but then it's like my whole being is kind of, I use the example as a Rubik's Cube. It's kind of, I don't know what combination I'll get any particular day. So it's like I say, I'll wake up and I'm hurting somewhere. It's like, well, I didn't do anything, or I wake up and I get migraines probably minimum, probably 3 times a week. Some of them I can get rid of pretty quick, but some of them, like this morning, I got rid of it with caffeine. That's probably the quickest way I can get rid of a headache.
Right.
If it's a lingering headache, caffeine shot, I can get rid of. So I drank a Red Bull first time in like 6 months. But like I know how to get rid of it so we can do this. I didn't want to be like, can we do it tomorrow? Or can we postpone it? Can you give it to this afternoon? But I do that a lot of the time. Like I said, I don't like, as me personally, I don't like planning a whole bunch if I can't fulfill it, So it's like, I don't put a lot on my agenda because I don't know what my body or mood will be.
Right.
If that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Well, I first of all, I appreciate you taking the time, and I know to do this, it's really, I'm really honored that you did take the time. So last thing I want to talk to you, Reggie, and obviously I want to go back to the injury because over the course of the last 2 years, Damar Hamlin goes down in a scary incident. And I remember when it happened, reading articles like the last time that happened was to you. And then just this last week, I don't know if you saw, but that Detroit game versus the Falcons, Atlanta, Maurice Norris went down and had an injury, and it was a scary injury. So when you see those type of things happen with Damar Hamlin, and then this last week, kind of, do you have flashbacks to it, or do you just like, I know that's part of the business that can happen. Clearly you're an example of it. What goes through your mind when you see those kind of things happen on the football field?
Uh, so when Damar Hamlin got hurt, I know exactly when it was because we were on the way back as my oldest son, Tulane, played in the Cotton Bowl against USC that same day.
Okay.
So as we're driving back from Dallas to Houston, my phone starts, going off. A lot of text messages start going off. I'm like, oh, okay. And I see a couple of them. People are congratulating, because Tulane beat USC. So they congratulate me about little Reggie. playing. They won. I was like, okay, cool. We got a Cotton Bowl champion in the family. Yada yada. But then I have a text message from RC Slocum, and I read that. I'm driving and reading the text message. I'm trying to ignore the rest of them. So it flashes up on my screen of my truck. So, our text me. So I look at it, and I can't remember what the text said. Something about, I'm thinking of you. I was like, oh, somebody got hurt. So a lot of times I'll know I'm going to start getting, interview requests, or I'll start getting text messages when if I like, okay, because I didn't even know about him getting hurt. Like saying, till I started getting those text messages. I like, somebody must have got hurt. So I know I go ahead and start expecting, you know, requests or my thoughts on certain injuries. But like I say, but watching them go down is kind of, I was like, before I would kind of, kind of have like certain flashbacks, but now it's kind of, I saw the highlight of the one Detroit. I wasn't watching the game at the time. Um, but I kind of, like certain flashbacks, but I don't know their total situation
Right.
as if I'm comparing to mine. I just kind of, my heart goes out to them because I know what my family went through when I got watching me get injured on TV. Actually now it's more media than ever. So it's out there a little quicker, especially on social media and everything like
Right.
that. So it's kind of I can only imagine, like say, what their family may be going through, what their teammates are going through. But I don't really know what until you know the entirety of what's going on with them. I try not to hit the panic button. As far as what could seriously happen. You know, so like I say, I really want to pray for them. Make sure that I hope make sure they're okay. But as far as I know when their career, if it's a career-ending injury, I can suspect what they might go through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but even like I say, the normal transition out of sports is difficult for some. Um, as far as going out with injury, I know that can be really traumatizing, for an extended amount of time. But obviously, DeMar Hamlin kind of made a comeback, so I was happy to see that. But the other young man from Detroit, I haven't heard too much about it. I saw the injury when he got hurt, but I don't know how serious it was. So I really don't know. Really can't comment on him. But yeah, like I say, it is definitely life altering. I would say life changing for sure. But yeah, I just know I just start anticipating somebody's going to reach out to me. You
Right.
know, like I said, but the DeMar Hamlin situation was, I said, oh, okay. I didn't even know what was going on because, like I said, I was at the Cotton Bowl the whole time.
Right.
Okay, something going on. Somebody got hurt.
Right.
I know my name gets thrown around sometimes. When people have a catastrophic injury like that. So yeah, it's just kind of been like that way for quite a while. Before me, it was Mike Utley. So I heard that quite a bit after I got injured. Actually, I met Mike Utley that same year I got hurt. That summer before I got hurt, my first time meeting him at a Detroit Lion practice. But nothing could tell me. Fast forward 6 months later, I'd have been going through what I was going through. So
Well, yeah, and Chuck Hughes before him was the only NFL player to die on a field. So that was like, I when I was
yeah,
researching the story or the interview for you, I was thinking, yeah, you go back through the history of Detroit Lions, and it's Chuck Hughes dies, Mike Utley gets paralyzed, then you, and then this injury last week.
mm-hmm.
I think he's in concussion protocol. The last I heard, they
Okay.
thought it was a neck injury, but he seems to be okay. And I think I saw a
Mm-hmm.
report where he said he's all good. So obviously that's good. But
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, so Reggie, again, I know we've talked. This is our third interview over the course of the
Mm-hmm.
last, 18 years, but I
Yeah.
appreciate the
Yeah.
time. It's, I really appreciate you. This is the first time we've done it on camera. So this will go down
Right.
for everybody will be able to see this. And I really think that people will watch this and listen to it. And it's a moving story. And I know you're still dealing with the pain daily. You talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish you the best of luck. You know, it's day to day, obviously, for you, as it is for
Yeah.
all of us, but clearly in your situation, there's pain that's residual effects from what you endured. But I really wish you the best of luck and thank you for taking the time to visit with me today.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Take
All
care.
right. Take care.